What's going on, guys? Welcome in to the Blitz podcast. Today we're going to be going over my final mock draft that is up on the Instagram right now at BlitzPod. Go check it out. Actually, don't check it out. Stay and watch the video because that's why we're here. We are going to be doing some things a little bit different today. I've been doing a lot of the hosting in the 2 episodes that we've done in the last 4 months. Because our previous host, or I guess co-host, but like the guy that kind of facilitated the conversation, Kane Schwartz, you guys know and love him very much. He has passed on to the Seattle Mariners. He got a job working for them. We're all excited. We're shaking our head, but we're happy for him, obviously. And as a result of that, he cannot work in sports media. That's in his contract. Can't do it. But as he's a replacement. We have Sam Coleman. Sam's come on in the past. He came on for the Bengals episode. And he's going to be the new host. So I will allow you to introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, allow me to reintroduce myself. But yeah, I've been a big or a long time friend of Jaden. Went to school together. I'm a big Bengals guy. You can tell. Photo jersey in the back. So I know it hurts him a lot. But I can't remember if I've been on any more episodes other than the Bengals one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just that one.
But yeah. But this should be fun. And as he said, it's going to be kind of a new point guard role, if you will, kind of facilitating conversation. And what a no better way to start that off than with the draft, which is probably one of the most talked about things outside of the playoffs in the NFL. So this should be exciting. I think the mock looks pretty interesting. As I don't know if anyone else has seen it, if anyone else has looked at it again, stick around. I want you to listen to the in-depth analysis of it. But yeah.
I'm ready to get started.
Absolutely. So when getting started, of course, the Chicago Bears are officially on the clock, have been on the clock for, what has it been, 2-3 months now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be very obvious what they go with. And from the mock draft, Caleb Williams is going to be their selection. I don't think this requires a massive head.
This isn't going to be a long conversation, at least not as long of a conversation as it was, say, a month, 2-3 months ago. With Justin Fields out of the picture, with Drake May and Jaden Daniels not really in the conversation here. This is Caleb Williams. I think I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is franchise-altering move here by the Bears when they take Caleb Williams. I legitimately think that he might be the best quarterback that the Bears have ever had the second he gets drafted. I think that he might have the most prolific passing season that the Bears have had in their franchise history. This year, he's going
not saying much,
to get 4,000 yards for him in this offense with this structure that he's currently got is not insane. And congrats to the Bears. They're going to be very relevant for years to come with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I will say he's not joining a superstar-studded lineup, but he is certainly.
I mean, in terms of number one pick, going, being the number one quarterback.
At least compared to last year's situation with
but that's the thing. Like,
Panthers. Yeah.
Pick, because most of the time, the number one pick does not get inherited from another team. So this is the worst team in the league. You think Jacksonville in 2021, that was like pre-Christian Kirk. That was like Laviska Shenault, and I guess he did have ETN, but he broke his foot in the first week. Burrow with the Bengals, Kyler with the Cardinals. These teams, Baker with the Browns, they were terrible. Bears have a really nice infrastructure, and I think Caleb's going to do really well there.
Yeah, and again, not much to really say about it. I know you're very high on him. I know that there's been some character concerns that people want to shoehorn onto him. I don't think you can really. I don't want to say you can ignore it, but I don't think you need to spend much time about it. He looks to be a franchise guy years to come, and kind of enough said with it. And then you move on to number 2, and this is where the draft really begins. And you kind of look at some interesting scenarios, but we went with Drake May here. And I think this is the correct selection. I think he is the number 2 quarterback in this class. I don't think it's debatable.
I agree. I think the closer, and I think it's just the fact that this has been such a long draft cycle that they're really starting to like nitpick May, and they're jumping into his footwork, and he has some inconsistency with his accuracy. And the main verdict that a lot of people were receiving from Washington has been it's going to be Jayden Daniels at 2. A lot of people were making the Cliff Kingsbury connection and like what kind of quarterback he may like. I don't really know how much input Cliff Kingsbury is going to have in this selection, considering he just got hired here. And also, there were a lot of rumblings that, we're recording this on Monday, the Monday before the draft. I don't know what could be happening by the time you listen to this, but the last that I've heard is the Topgolf thing that happened. For those that don't know, the Commanders invited like 25, 30 odd prospects to go to Topgolf all together and just kind of like, they just kind of observed. And they did that with Jayden Daniels. They did that with Drake May. They did that with J.J. McCarthy. And I'd imagine, it wasn't all quarterbacks. It was a lot of other players they might be looking at probably in the second and third rounds and stuff like that. And Daniels' camp was not happy with it, which to me screams it didn't go well. Because if it went well, they wouldn't be like, well, this is bad. And why did they do that if he did well at it? Because he'd be fine. And also, Drake May went on somebody's podcast today, and they asked him, like, how did it go? He was like, I was doing pretty well, but JJ was also doing pretty well. Didn't say anything about Daniels. I don't know. We're reading into it. We're it's smokescreen season. But
yeah,
as of right now, I think it's May.
Yeah, and I know there have been like a lot of people talking about it. It's a lot of the managers kind of getting involved with it, like the player personnel managers are kind of like throwing out these smoke screens. I know a team we're getting ready to talk about in a little bit, the Giants, do that a ton. So I just think it was kind of that. But yeah, again, I think with Washington, this is kind of a slam dunk pick. You throw a guy, he at least has some weapons, Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. I know we saw a lot of struggles from the offensive line, but they seem
that
to
were not addressed at all.
Yeah, they've done nothing to fix that, but it should be interesting at least. I think they're going to be doing a little bit better than their AFC or their NFC. Is it North?
East.
East. Yeah, I think they'll be doing better than that. I can't remember.
Jesus. The Giants?
Yeah, I think they'll do a lot better than Giants. I don't know why they took so long to
I don't know.
think about, but
we'll see. We'll talk about the Giants shortly.
Yeah. To move forward, we have our first trade of the mock. Now, this is something that's been talked about a little bit, nowhere near as another trade we're going to get to, but New England trades out of 3, and they trade it to the Raiders. We'll get to the New England side of this in a little bit, but for the Raiders, I think this would be very, very good. I know that there's been a lot of talk about their head coach loving Jayden Daniels. I think this would be a brilliant move. They could do it for the right price.
That's the thing. And let me tell you, it's not the right price. This is going to be expensive because I know that everybody likes to pull up the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart. I do it all the time. Hell, I did it multiple times doing this mock. From picks 5 and earlier, so 1 through 5, those picks are market price. You can't put a number on it. You can't quantify it. If you put the 49ers trade, I like to reference this a lot because, the Patriots at 3 can be referenced very easily to when the Eagles were at 3, I believe, in 2021, and the 49ers came up to draft Trey Lance. It was 3 first-round picks. It was 12, which is right around where Vegas is right now, and a future first and another future first. I think that's going to be very similar to what's happening here. I think who gets taken at 2 is going to determine what teams are going to be coming up here. I think if it is Daniels, I think Vegas is in, and they're going to be in on this pick. And I think Minnesota is out. I don't think Daniels makes a ton of sense for Minnesota. He doesn't really fit what they want to do. I also think New England might not be as in on Daniels. I think they'd be much more like in tune to stick and pick if it is Drake May available at 3. I don't know. That's just kind of my perception of it. I think the Broncos are going to call. I don't know how far they're going to get in that conversation. The Giants, I think it's kind of the same thing. If May were here, maybe they're going to be accepting more calls, but I definitely think the Giants will be calling. I think the Broncos will be calling. And if you're the Raiders and the Broncos are calling, you don't like it. And if they think of Jayden Daniels as highly to like make this kind of offer to take him at number 3, they don't want that guy going in the division because they're going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to deal with Herbert, and they're going to have to deal with Mahomes. They don't want to have definitively the worst quarterback in that division. That is a recipe for failure. So they're going to give up 13. They're going to give up a 2025 first. They're going to give up a 2026 first, and they're going to give up number 77 in this year's class. I get it. That's a lot. But Vegas is on a weird timeline now because you go out and you trade half of a draft for Devontae Adams. You're running out of time there. The offensive line definitely needs some help. I don't think this is like a slam dunk move for Vegas, but I just cannot support the idea of walking into next year with Gardner Minshew. I can't.
Yeah, I totally understand. It just, I think that they've kind of put themselves in a position to where they will be taking a quarterback, whether it's going to be a trade up here like we have predicted, or if it's going to be them staying and taking maybe reaching.
The thing is, they might not even have the chance to do that because, I mean, let's play this out and get real crazy. Chicago, Washington, New England, all three take quarterback. Then the Giants take J.J. McCarthy. Then the Vikings are like, shit, we got to take Bo Nix at 11. And then the Broncos are like, oh my God, we've got to take Michael Penix. The Raiders are sitting there looking at Michael Pratt and Spencer Rattler with the 13th overall pick. So that's why I said it is market price for the top five, at least in this draft. And they're kind of just going to have to pay it or they're not going to have a quarterback.
Yeah. And that we can kind of segue this. You're looking at kind of like not a home run. It's kind of an iffy pick for both sides. But I think when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. here at 4 to the Cardinals, it's a fantastic pick. Brilliant fit. Brilliant player going to a team that is ready to kind of rebuild this offense around Kyler Murray, who is being paid a lot of money. They showed some promise there, some fight. Got fire in your gut early on in the season.
You got fire in your gut.
But yeah, this one won't need much conversation either. This is brilliant.
Yeah, real quickly, I do want to touch on the New England side of that trade down. I understand you don't want to leave this draft without a quarterback, but your team is really bad. You need to fill a lot of holes on this roster. Your offensive line is terrible. Your wide receivers are terrible. Your defense is fine, but this is also a defense that's been coached by Bill Belichick for the last few years that has been known to get more out of guys than what they probably should be getting. And you got to imagine, maybe not Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon, but a lot of those like B and C tier players aren't going to be B and C tier players because they don't have a guy like Belichick coaching them up. So you do kind of need to expand your portfolio here and get more picks. And also, I'm just going to say the Patriots aren't done. They're going to be they're going to be busy throughout the rest of this mock draft. And then on the Arizona front, real quickly, they're also going to be receiving calls, but I think that the Cardinals showed down the stretch once Kyler came back, they're a little bit closer than we thought that they were. And they have, I believe, 7 picks in the top 100. They're fine. Like, I think they'll be okay. They're going to be able to make a lot of picks in the range where there's after the third round, it's kind of a drop off a little bit in terms of talent in this class. They don't really need to diversify as much. They've got another first round pick already. So I think I think they should and they will stick and pick Marvin Harrison here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hadn't touched too much on it because it's still in the first page here what the Patriots are doing, but we're getting way too far ahead of ourselves. Right now, we got another trade at number 5. The Chargers trade out. They trade with Minnesota. This trade's been mocked a ton. It doesn't take too much,
If you've looked at a mock draft in the last 3 weeks, you've seen pretty much the exact package I'm about to explain. It's going to be 5 for 11, 23, and a 25 third. I know that seems a little slight compared to what was just honestly, should it be more? Because
if you want me to be honest, I don't think it should be more because you said it's market price, and I think when you're looking at the market for J.J. McCarthy,
so the difference between 3 and 5 from what I just did, because I said 3 firsts and a third, which I get, we might get some comments saying that's a little pricey. If Joe Horitz gets a call and he's like 11 and 23 and a third after he just saw New England get 3 firsts and a third, 2 picks before that, He's
Yeah,
probably farting on the phone and hanging up.
I I agree, but I mean,
It's tricky because they don't have a second next year to like kind of bridge that gap.
yeah. But my thing is, do you really want to pay 3 first-round picks for JJ McCarthy? That's kind of my question.
Do you have a choice? If the
I mean,
Patriots say, or if the Chargers say, what are you going to do if we don't? I mean, the Giants smokescreening the hell out of this. The Vikings have to be pretty scared right now of like, especially if the Giants keep this
yeah.
hype train of that rolling. It's like, shit, he might not last one more pick. We can't even call anybody else.
hmm
So,
I guess they would kind of be stuck right here.
I mean, we don't like, outside of the point of conversation, we don't have to like make any definitive decisions on what the package is or isn't. So that we're just
yeah.
going to kind of say, and we know 11 and 23 are in, and those are the only things that are going to be affecting this specific mock draft, and that's really all that matters.
Yeah, but to kind of go through the pick a little bit more, they've got a great foundation to build JJ McCarthy around. I'm gonna say that now.
Oh yeah,
And from everything that he's very good at, he's good at throwing across the field. And if he's going to be good at throwing across the field or throwing right down the middle, he's going to love Jordan Addison. He's going to absolutely adore Justin Jefferson. So I don't think that's going to be too big of an issue. It's just I don't know if he's worth 3 first-round picks. If that's what it's going to take after Jaden Daniels moves off the board, or if it's a more traditional mock draft, like you see, the Patriots stay there, and this is the first trade of the draft. It just kind of depending on package, at least for me personally.
I understand. And like, I totally get the thought process of, hey, I don't want to give up 3 first-round picks for JJ McCarthy, but you're not in a position where your job relies on your quarterback. And
Yeah.
also not in a position where I have the best non-quarterback in football and his production is strictly dependent on
On the quarterback.
the fact of whether or not I pick this guy. And he might not want to be here if I don't pick this guy, if I don't trade up for this guy. I don't know. Maybe he is a big JJ McCarthy guy. I don't know.
You know who he could be going to, Jaden?
Anywhere else than what you're about to say.
Be going to the Cincinnati Bengals, but we'll not really discuss
One hell
that.
of a pipe dream is what that is.
Exactly. To move on, Malik Neighbors at 6 here to the Giants. This I feel like doesn't take a whole lot of thinking either. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
I
the
mean-
best receiver left, and he's joining a team that has checks notes. Darius Slayton as their wide receiver 1 right now. That's fine. I think to roll with another season of a $40 million man and Daniel Jones, I think it's okay.
And like, I was talking to a Giants fan today, and he was like, yeah, I really like it, but I'm talking myself into quarterback because I don't want to do Daniel Jones again. And I get that, and I'm sure that that's what the Giants are doing. But we talked about it a little bit. The Giants lie. They put a lot of lies out into the ether, and I think, like, I don't really know how much they have to gain from this, but like, let's say the Giants are like, well, we're going to take JJ McCarthy unless you give us this, this, and this to Minnesota or to Denver or whoever. That's all that is. But if they, if the 4 quarterbacks are gone and Marvin Harrison's gone, it's a matter of preference. I will say Odunze is growing on me. Like, as a player, I was like, Neighbors is so far away ahead of Odunze for a little bit. He's grown on me. I definitely think that, like I said, it's a matter of preference. I think that there's definitely an argument to be made that the pick could be Odunze here based on what they actually need. I mean, they need everything, but maybe, Odunze might be an archetype that fits a little bit more for what they need at the moment. But I think Neighbors is a better player. I think the Giants are not in a position to be picky, and they should pick the best player, and I think that's Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And you go from another team, or we go to another team that is picking the best player available, Joe Alt to the Tennessee Titans. Terrific pick. This was a bad offensive line last year. They think they found their guy in Will Levis. Go all in. Go give him whatever he needs. They went and picked up Calvin Ridley in the offseason. This is a team that's trying to build towards being a contender in what is now a very, very competitive AFC South.
I definitely think that there might be some buzz of a trade down here for one of the teams that need wide receiver. Because if we remember, the Titans obviously hired Brian Callahan, which means they also get his father, Bill Callahan, who is like the offensive line godfather. Could they bet on that and say, what if we moved down, added like an extra second, or hell, depending on, I've done this in the past, maybe not this exact trade because the interdivision makes that a little complicated. What if Indianapolis wants to come up and they're like, we'll give you 15 in next year's first, and they go down and pick an Amarius Mims, a J.C. Latham, not a developmental tackle per se, but a guy that's not as, refined as Joe Alt, to the point where you bet on Bill Callahan to coach that guy up. I don't think they should do that, but I think it's an option that they're going to explore.
Yeah, I agree, but to kind of counter that, why would you not want to pair what is a fantastic offensive line mind in Bill Callahan and what is the best offensive tackle prospect in this draft?
It's just a matter of where they think their roster's at. If they feel like they really need more picks, then maybe they go that route. But ultimately, like, if outside of Caleb Williams to the Bears at 1, I am probably the most confident in Joe Alt being a Tennessee Titan at the end of the night out of any other pick in the draft.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So again, there will probably be conversation around it, but yeah. So then we move to another trade. Atlanta is moving out of 8, and surprisingly, the Patriots are coming up to this pick. Now, I'm kind of shocked about this. At least, like, thinking about it on draft night, this would be so confusing.
Oh, this would be like oh my God, everybody, holy shit. Like, every Patriots fan's like, oh my God, they're coming back.
Well, what are we doing here?
They're spinning back.
And it's to pick Rome Odunze, who, as you said, is growing on a lot of people. He has got one of the best route trees in this draft. He is a very, very good wide receiver. He's very, very good. He's probably, he's the
wide receiver 1 in last year's class. I would probably have him behind Garrett Wilson in 22, but in front of everybody else. 21, you're getting murky with Jamar, and that was obviously a very good class in its own right. But Rome Odunze is a very good wide receiver prospect. That is a wide receiver 1 in a lot of classes, the same way that we've talked about Malik Neighbors. And my rationale, I want to touch on Atlanta. Atlanta, if they stick and pick here, is taking a defensive player. They can wait on a defensive player. You look throughout the next few picks, the only team that I think would be threatening to take a defensive player is the Chargers at 11. Like, maybe Chicago does, but there's a lot of guys in the same tier there. If you can come down here, I think I had them trading.
I know it was 13.
Yeah, it was the Patriots would be trading 13, and I think it was like 2/3 or maybe a future second and a third, because there's some other stuff going on that they are needing those picks for. But they're going to come up here to number 8. I mean, we talked about it. They got Pop Douglas and Kendrick Bourne. I mean, you can't, even if you're throwing Jacoby Brissett out there, that's rude to Jacoby Brissett. I mean, you got to get somebody here, and especially with the opportunity for them to jump back up. I know it's a little confusing, and the odds of this actually happening are probably very slim.
Yeah.
Because the moving around is really, quite frankly, it's a new concept. Teams, I mean, the Cardinals, when they did it last year, when they went from 3 to 12 and 12 to 6, everybody was like, whoa. But New England could be in position, especially with all the capital that they just acquired from Vegas, to do this. And I think this would be fantastic for them to get him here at 8.
Yeah, and again, it's he becomes that wide receiver 1 the moment he puts on the hat.
Yeah.
I think that's, if this is a team that had a better quarterback than, as you said, Jacoby Brissett, this is a slam dunk. But it's that team needs something. They've obviously got the massive haul from the Raiders. Kind of makes sense. Then you move into another trade, back-to-back picks. The Saints come up and they take a tackle from Chicago, or they take with the pick from Chicago. Olu Fashanu comes in here. I think this is pretty good for them too. That's a team that is in a very weird position right now.
Oh yeah, and this is not a Jaden would. If Jaden was in charge of the Saints, this is what Jaden would do. The Saints are stupid, and they've always been stupid, because they can never look in the mirror and say, hey, we don't got it. We don't got it right now. I don't have the horses for this. I just don't. And they keep making these moves. I mean, you think about 2 years ago, we were like, okay, well, I guess the Saints are going to start transitioning to irrelevancy. And then they trade their future first-round pick to get another first-round pick in the same draft just to take a tackle who, by the way, is the reason why they need a tackle right now. And wide receiver Chris Olave, great pick. I'm sure they do that again. I don't think this is the best move, and I honestly think that there is a chance that they could stay at 14 and take him. But with the way that this is kind of going here, Jets at 10, Chargers at 11, now the Falcons at 13, but those, especially those first two with the Jets and the Vikings, or the Chargers, Jesus, they could be looking to take tackle there. And the Saints, I've heard that the Saints really like Olu, and it's also Fashanu. I've said Fashanu the entire draft process. Fashanu, it's not your fault. I'm sure I've said it too. I love Olu. He was my tackle one heading into the year. Didn't have a fantastic year, but wasn't terrible either. Outside of the Steelers going to get Brandon Ayuk, Olu being there at 20 or us maneuvering a way to get up for Olu is my dream scenario. So this would hurt to see. But I still think the Saints are going to this. I don't think that there's a way that the Saints look back on this and be like, man, we really shouldn't have done that. Or let me rephrase that. This was a bad move. Maybe they shouldn't have done it because, you're probably not a team that needs to be trading up right now. You're probably actually a trade back team, but that's just not how their mind works.
Yeah, until heads roll in New Orleans, I think this will always be the way that they think.
And it's more so Loomis than anybody who's, that head isn't going to roll. Real quickly on the Bears rationale for this, with the 3 wide receivers off the board, I see very minimal reason for them to stay and pick here, because anybody that you were thinking about here would be available at 14 in my mind.
Personally, I don't even know why they would stick around if all 3 wide receivers are there. I mean, if you want to take a Doomsday, or if Neighbors is there, I would really understand.
If there's a wide receiver there, the Bears are taking him. Outside of that, I don't know any reason why they should stay there. They've only got 4 picks in this draft. Not that they need them, because they've done a pretty good job with this roster, but you still only got 4 picks in this draft. Wouldn't hurt to add a second round pick in a class that does have a lot of talent in the mid rounds. But with those 3 gone, there is zero reason to stay there.
Yeah. And then you move to a team that there's a lot of talk about what they're going to do, and there's a lot of talk about what's really going on with the New York Jets. But they stay there. They take Troy Fautanu. Let's hope that name is correct.
Fautanu.
Yep. I know that it's kind of between him and Bowers right now, or a tackle and Bowers.
Yeah, I was about to say, the main pick for about the last month has been Brock Bowers here. And I get it. I've done it. But I cannot see them lining up next year with just Tyron Smith and just Morgan Moses as your 2 tackles. Tyron Smith has not played a 17-game season in a lot of time, roughly. And Fautanu, he's got 5-position versatility. Maybe he can't play center, but he can play both tackle spots. He can play both guard spots. He's really good. I think he's the 3rd best tackle in this class. I have him behind Alt and Olu, and that's how I have them being drafted here. And Brock Bowers is great. I get it. But when has Aaron Rodgers ever trusted a rookie? If you're trying to win this year, do you want to go draft a guy that's going to give you 600 yards on 70 odd targets, especially when Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams are there? A guy that Wilson is a guy that Rodgers built a lot of rapport with over this last offseason and probably this offseason as well. And Mike Williams, a vet that he trusts. I think Brock Bowers is at least short term, the 3rd fiddle in that offense, plus Breece Hall. I just don't know if the return on investment is going to be there, plus the tight end positional issue that a lot of people are going to be talking about. I just don't know if Brock Bowers brings enough value for the Jets at 10, and I think Troy Fautanu brings a lot of value for them.
Yeah, agreed. This was a bad offensive line all last year. I know you said they brought in 2 pieces to that line, but
when Tyron Smith goes down, it's last year's line again for the most part. I mean, Barrett Tucker's going to be back because he did get hurt and missed most of last year. Morgan Moses has not been a stupendously healthy guy, and even when he has, he's 30, 31. He's getting up there in age as well. They do bring in John Simpson from the Ravens in addition to Morgan Moses, but again, I don't think that should stop you from drafting Troy Fautanu, because he also gives you options to say, okay, either A, we don't want to put him at guard and then he's good at guard and then we have to keep him at guard. We want him to be a tackle long term, so we'd rather him sit behind a guy. Or if he comes into training camp is just fucking shit up, just get your best 5 out there and he's going to be part of your best 5. So it gives you a lot of options. It's a long-term play and a short-term play. I just feel like this makes a little bit more sense than Bowers at this time.
Yeah, I definitely understand, and I know Bowers is a tricky guy to draft for,
Very.
because of his position value.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move on to another team that could potentially take him now that the Jets have passed and they're in the spot with the Minnesota trade. The Chargers are here, but Harbaugh gets this guy, or gets a tackle at least, and gets Talise Fuaga.
Mm-hmm.
He was a primarily right tackle, I believe. Great pick for them.
Yeah.
Not a good offensive line over there, and this is another team that we're going to be talking about, has got a pretty bad roster once we look past a couple that highlight guys.
And this is why you trade down from 5, because you need multiple cornerstone type players, as opposed to just one Malik Neighbors. Talise Fuaga is a guy that, and maybe this is like us all just being convinced that Jim Harbaugh's a meathead. Like they're like, oh, what if they take him at 5? I mean, he's like your typical road grading, mauling, run blocking offensive line. Like that's exactly what he is. He's going to slide right at a right tackle there, get 2 bookend tackles with him and Slater on the left side. You still have Zion Johnson, a first-round pick from 2 years ago at right guard. You still have Jamari Sawyer at left guard. Center, I can't remember if they've addressed that because Corey Linsley retired. Or is going to retire, something like that.
Couldn't tell you.
And I think honestly, I think that's the best option for them here. Again, this is a guy that we've heard that they liked. He fits in at right tackle. Could look at one of the defensive guys, like a corner in Quinyon Mitchell. I've seen that before. I think this is too early for any of the remaining wide receivers. I just think Fuaga is like, if that trade happens, I'd be willing to bet that this is what ends up happening with the Chargers pick at 11.
Yeah, and to kind of comment on wide receivers, I think that this is another pick that a lot of, how we commented on the Patriots with, that pick being, like, why would they do that? And why would we trade out of 5 there? For a wide receiver, I get it. But I do think tackle is going to wind up being the better long-term play for them.
Mm-hmm. And again,
with him as the head coach.
Deep wide receiver class. Mm-hmm. You have 23. You also have 37, which is right in that prime, like outside the top 5 wide receiver, like the Ladd McConkey, the Troy Franklin, Xavier Legette, whatever wide receiver in that I guess third tier technically, that you want. You can probably pick that guy at 37, but there's no Talise Fuaga sitting in the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. And you move on to, I believe this is another new trade. The Broncos trade out of 12.
We were moving around.
Yeah, I know. There's been, how many picks have we had that have been on the same team? We got
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 traded picks out of our first 12. And the next 2 also traded picks, so 8 of the first 14. Look.
Wow.
If you want to go, hey, this isn't realistic, I hear you. But tell me that, like, if this were to happen, I mean, like, this one right here. This is the Philadelphia Eagles moving up. I think this makes a ton of sense for both teams. I loved this trade. We'll do the Broncos first. The Broncos need a quarterback. The top 4 are gone. Do not take Bo Nix at number 12, Sean. Don't do it. You're going to regret it. That's a bad idea. It's terrible. Also, quick Broncos interjection. Those jerseys,
oh, they're bad.
They're bad.
They're very bad. I like the navy ones with the white pants. They're okay.
I think the throwbacks weren't even going to be released until like a couple months from now, and they were just like, "Oh my god, this is bad." Let's put out the throwbacks. We're doing the throwbacks too. Put them out.
Well, the problem is they're now going to be compared to the Lions. This is a really weird tangent we're going to go on, but the Lions the Lions jerseys period were so good, and you compare them to the Broncos, which is literally 2 lines on the shoulder pads, and that's it.
They look like XFL jerseys. But we'll move on to the Eagles real quick so we can actually stay on track here.
Yeah.
Eagles come up here. They're going to give a second round pick. I believe they've got 50, or they got 400. Jesus, they've got 50. Said it right the first time. They're going to send 50 and 22 to Denver for 12, and they're going to jump Atlanta. They're going to jump Chicago. They're going to jump all those corner needy teams, and they're going to get the number 1 corner in this class, Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. This would be a slam dunk. I know everybody's like, oh, well, Howie doesn't take corners in the first round. he just hasn't needed to. Like everybody that's like, oh well, they're gonna take a tackler. Like, I do not understand that. At least not where they're picking. Like, they've just spent their last 2 firsts on interior defensive linemen. I know you just got rid of Hassan Reddick, but there's not really an edge in my mind that's going to be available in the 20s. Maybe a Jared Verse falls, maybe a Latu falls a little bit. I don't even really see those guys as good fits in Philly. Maybe you take your Lane Johnson replacement, but like, you can't do that later.
Like, yeah, and to be fair, this is a team that has had a fantastic offensive line for eons.
This is not a team that needs to be trading up to get like a sure thing at offensive tackle.
No, and this is also a team that's had a fairly strong secondary for a long time, but it's slowly been chipped away at over the past couple years,
and now it sucks.
So yeah, and I think they're kind of at that point where, as you said, Howie's going to have to take a first-round corner, and moving up to 12, that package is not a lot for them, especially as a contending team. I think this is brilliant.
And the thing is, in my mind, it's tier 1 for corner is 2 guys. It's Quinyon Mitchell and it's Terrion Arnold at Alabama. Then I think Cooper DeJean is kind of sitting in a tier of his own at corner 3. And then after that, you're getting really scared of what could happen with those, like with Kool-Aid McKinstry, with TJ Tampa, with Ennis Rakestraw. I don't feel comfortable about drafting that guy and putting him into a starting role right away, which is probably what's going to happen with whatever corner they take first.
Yes.
If those first 2 guys go, like Colts at 15 are a Quinyon Mitchell team, or a corner team rather. The Jags at 17 could be a corner team. The Falcons at 13 right behind this could be a corner team. And let's say the Steelers take Cooper DeJean, or I think the Dolphins could honestly also be looking at a corner.
Absolutely.
Then they're like kind of SOL, and they need a corner probably more than any of those teams that we just mentioned. So I think it'd be wise for them to come up here and get a guy like Quinyon.
Yeah. And then you move on to 13 now with another team that you mentioned probably needs a corner. And as you said earlier, needs defensive help. This was not kind of a question. They need players on the defensive side of the football. Dallas Turner's right here at 13. He is the first edge rusher off the board. This is good stuff from them. They got a couple more picks from New England from this as well. This is a good idea from them.
Yeah, good. I like this makes this is Atlanta's like so happy with what just happened. Yes. If this happens, because that's probably in my mind at 8, it's between Dallas Turner and Quinyon Mitchell, and you come down to 13, acquire a couple picks, and still get Dallas Turner. I think that's very good business for them. I think, obviously, once they signed Kirk Cousins and, I guess for the sake of saying it, Darnell Mooney, that pretty much closed the door on drafting an offensive player to me at 8. I did see Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, one of those two, like, big guys, say that Michael Penix could go as high as 8 to the Falcons. Pardon? Why?
Yeah.
That's not happening.
That doesn't make it, no.
I just thought that was worthy of note that I did see that today and was very confused.
Little perplexed, if you will.
Take a 24-year-old quarterback to go back up the guy you just signed for 4 years, $180 million. That's good. That's good.
No, yeah, not good business as compared to what we have them doing here, which is very good business. They get behind the tackle run and the other defensive players that they maybe had to have a head scratcher on. They don't have to make that decision. Dallas Turner, number 1 edge rusher in the class. Great deal.
Easy money.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you move on to the pick that the Bears acquired from the Saints trade, and they're going to take an O-lineman here with Graham Barton. We didn't give him an exact position.
I think so. Like PFF, like if anybody that's done the mock draft simulator, he's listed as an offensive tackle there, and I think he can play there. I just think in the NFL he's going to end up being an interior guy. He's another 5-position type player that I think could end up playing center. I think he could end up playing tackle. I think he could end up playing guard. And that, like, I didn't like the Bears at 9. Like, the Bears at 9, I got stuck up on for a little bit because with the 3 receivers going, you don't really want to take, like, a locked-in tackle like an Olu Fashanu. You don't want to take a guy like that because they do have Braxton Jones on the left side, and then they've got Darnell Wright, their first-round pick from last year on the right side. I don't think Braxton Jones is like a franchise tackle, but I don't think he's like needs to be replaced. But Barton just gives you that versatility to be able to do that. I know, I mean, this is probably the highest I've seen Graham Barton go. I know this is my mock draft. But he's getting a lot of positive buzz right now, and I think he's going to go a little bit higher than people think. And I've always thought that like grabbing an offensive lineman after trading down for Chicago would be a really nice move. At the time when I like first thought of it, this was when the Jackson Powers Johnson hype was like really building, and I was like, man, if they could trade down into like the mid to late teens and draft Jackson Powers Johnson, I think that'd be fantastic. But here they get Graham Barton. I'd be really happy if I was a Bears fan. I'm walking away with Caleb Williams, Graham Barton, and some extra picks to do it as well.
Yeah, I don't think this is a bad pick at all. I think this makes a lot of sense for that team. Got to really build some structure around Caleb Williams. I know you talked about they've at least got the 2 receivers. Probably take another one somewhere later in the draft. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you move on to another team that's building around a non-rookie quarterback now, the Colts. This one to me, kind of a head scratcher. Not really, but
really,
yeah. I mean, Brock Bowers to them, best tight end. He's a top 5 prospect in this draft. No doubt about it. Mm-hmm. But again, the positional value for me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You still got Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. They're okay enough. Yeah, you have 2 wide receivers. I mean, they're
certainly not a selfish comment here.
No.
Definitely not that.
No, absolutely not. But I don't know. The Brock Bowers pick seems like it fills a need on that team.
I've seen it. Yeah. So, and I've seen that a couple times. I probably would have went with Quinyon Mitchell if he was here, but he's not.
Yes.
And I think that is going to change what they do. He's a good football player, and I think the Colts are going to be in the position to be acquiring good football players. He's the best player on the board for sure.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of positional value, he's a pass catcher. I've been a very big proponent of saying get more pass catchers in Indy. If you would tell me Brian Thomas here, I might push back a little bit. I don't know if I love the fit with him here. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not like holding on to Alec Pierce stock or anything. I just personally, I don't like Brian Thomas as high. That's just me. I don't think he's bad. I just don't know if I'd be like, okay, this is my first round pick. We're going with Brian Thomas at 15. Like, this is supposed to be our new wide receiver 1. Because if you're taking a guy this high, you'd like almost be like, okay, he needs to be as good or better than Michael Pittman. And I don't see that from him.
I do think this is a team that you're going to be looking at as, I don't know if they pick at 15. I really don't know if they pick at 15, if they're picking maybe at 9, or if they
could be. I think they could go both ways. I think they could trade up. Yeah, I also think they could be a trade down team as well, to get down into that tier where I feel a lot more comfortable taking a Brian Thomas or an A.D. Mitchell or somebody like that to get down into the mid to late 20s. That's also very possible, but I don't know. Bowers is going to be a pass catcher. He's going to catch balls. It's him and Pittman. Like, he's going to eat.
Yeah.
I like this for Brock Bowers. I don't know. It's fine.
If you want me to be honest, I feel like they had more pressing needs in tight end. But that's my only complaint.
But the thing is, so does every team in the NFL. And Brock Bowers is not going to fall to 32. So
no. So I fully get it. And then you move on to the Seattle Seahawks here. They're taking Byron Murphy, inside defensive lineman. I am in shambles as a Bengals fan, but it's okay. This is a very good pick for them. That's a defensive line that's kind of fallen to pieces now.
Yeah, this has been, I believe, maybe the last time I did it, or did a mock, it was Graham Barton. And they do need interior offensive linemen, but with Graham Barton off the board and Jackson Powers Johnson stock kind of losing a little bit of its fire these last couple weeks. I don't know if certainly 16 is not really a possibility for him anymore. I mean, it's more of a conversation of, is he going to go in the first round or not? But I've also seen from 2 different sources at 2 different time periods that Byron Murphy is not making it past the Seahawks at 16. And I mean, that, like, a popular pick for the Bears at 9 is Byron Murphy. You look at Seattle's interior defensive line group right now, it's not fantastic. They could also be looking to grab an edge rusher here as well. But I think Byron Murphy, in my opinion, you know, Latu's injury stuff aside, I think he's the best pick if you're trying to get a pass rusher, even though he's an interior guy.
Yeah. So again, I feel like this makes a good bit of sense. Um, but to quickly go back through a very hectic first round of
Yeah.
the NFL draft, you've got Caleb Williams to the Bears, Drake May to the Commanders, Jaden Daniels in a trade going to the Raiders instead of New England, Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals, J.J. McCarthy from a trade with the Vikings moving up to come get him, Malik Neighbors going to New York, Joe Alt to Tennessee, Roma Dunze from another trade with the Patriots coming up here to 8, Olu Fashanu to the Saints, Troy Fatanu to the Jets, Fuaga to the
Really killing
Carter.
you in that stretch there.
Yeah, I know the goodness. The Islander name
Fashanu,
really
Fatanu, and Fuaga.
Fuaga, man. And then Quinyon Mitchell to the Eagles in yet another trade.
I
Dallas
was
Turner.
working the phones.
Yeah, Dallas Turner to the Falcons now. The Bears after another trade. Brock Bowers to the Colts. Byron Murphy to the Seahawks. And now we're moving into the back half of the draft. And I've made many comments to you that that stretch in there is kind of boring. And you completely flipped that on its head. It was not boring.
I tried.
And we're moving on to kind of a more stabilized.
Yeah, we're gonna dial it back here a little bit for these next.
Yeah. Terry and Arnold goes to the Jaguars. This makes a ton of sense. That team is in a very weird spot right now. I'm not going to put them in the same tiers like the Saints is like a team that's went backwards. They're a team that's like in no man's land. Of their division is getting a lot more competitive, and they're going to add a defensive back to kind of help ease the pressure off the Texans, who now have got 3 really fantastic pass catchers over there and a quarterback that's going to light them up. So I think this is a great pick for them.
Yeah, I would honestly put this, and it's kind of hard to say this far down the board. I would put this right next to or right behind Caleb Williams going to the Bears and Joe Alt going to the Titans. I think Terry and Arnold is such a good scheme fit for what the Jags are going to want to do defensively. They just hired Ryan Nielsen to be their defensive coordinator. He's coming over from the Saints. He implemented all of that press man stuff that they've been running. They run press all the time. That is exactly what Terry and Arnold does well. That is really all Terry and Arnold does well. He is going to be really bad in zone, and I'm a little worried about that for his prospects as a draftable player. But they're gonna be able to put him in really good situations, really advantageous situations. I hear the Brian Thomas / AD Mitchell conversation here, and yeah, I mean, would it be great if they could trade this pick and or something around here for T. Higgins? Probably, but I don't know if the Bengals are doing that. Personally, I don't know, and that's a little bit kind of high on the value side for T. Higgins, but come on.
Okay.
Yeah. So I really like this fit here. This is one of those ones that, like, especially this far down the board, it's hard to find something that feels as much of a sure thing as this does to me right now. I think this is happening 100%, and I'm gonna victory lap like shit when it does.
Okay, I'm
just
glad
letting you know
that you're to go ahead and announce that right now. But yeah, I don't think that needs much more explanation. You move on to 18, J.C. Latham to the Bengals. I think this makes some sense.
Okay, well, I'm glad you think it makes some sense.
Obviously, with our offensive line troubles the past couple years, I think this will be just fine for us.
I will say it was between him and Johnny Newton. Those were the two that I narrowed it down to. I mean,
personally, I'm going with the defensive lineman here. I get it. I think I need Newton, but I
get it. And the thing is, personally, don't really like Latham. Sorry, but okay. I'm not.
All right.
He's my tackle 6 in this class. I mean, those 4 guys that have already gone. I have Mims in front of J.C. Latham as well.
Okay.
And then, like, depending on what you want to do with Grant Barton, whether you put him at tackle or guard or whatever, Latham kind of scares me. He doesn't play with as much oomph as you would hope for a guy that's that big. Doesn't dominate as well, but he is huge, and he has, for a bigger guy, he can play guard right away. I think that might honestly be what they do. You did bring in Trent Brown on a 1-year deal. Maybe this is a guard for year 1, tackle from there on out, or he's a guy that you put him at guard in year one, realize that he's a Pro Bowler, and just keep him there. That very well is in the realm of possibility for J.C. Latham. So it's not like a terrible pick, and I'm aware that I'm the one that made it. But I don't
you would do something different here. Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
Personally, I would not do this. Like, if the Steelers draft J.C. Latham, I'm going to be rolling my eyes and groaning a little bit.
Okay. Well, someone's got to take him, but to move forward.
Someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to.
To move forward, the Rams taking Laiatu Latu. I think this is very good value for him. Brilliant to kind of help a defensive line that's losing its cornerstone. It's like true, heartbeat.
Yeah, the bit has been like taking Byron Murphy or Jerzon Newton here and just being like, well, they got the next Aaron Donald, and just playing those expectations on him. But no, I think Latu, with no injury concerns, I think Latu's the first defensive player on the board, but he had to be medically retired or was about to be medically retired with a neck injury, which is obviously not great. But he also, athletically, some of his testing numbers, they were better than a lot of people thought they were going to be, but they still weren't the level of a Dallas Turner or even a Jared Verse. But I don't think the Rams care about that. Puka Nacua is not a 99th percentile athlete. Cooper Kupp, not a 99th percentile athlete. And if anybody, we saw this with Miami a few years ago with Jalen Phillips. If anybody knows what's going on with his injury situation, the Rams drive up the road to UCLA and they really can figure this shit out. We saw this with Jalen Phillips coming out of Miami, gets drafted to the Dolphins. He's been very good. He just tore his ACL, but that is unrelated to the injury that he was worried that there was worry about coming out of college for him. So I think this is a great move. This is one of the best players in the class if he's healthy. And yeah, if you're well, he's probably not going to be playing more this is going to be a 12-year player. That's just probably not in his not going to happen for him because of the injury. The Rams are kind of on a timeline, and they've made that kind of apparent. They want to win right now. They think they can win right now. And Latu, if he gets drafted, if this mock draft plays out, he's probably the betting favorite to be Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, absolutely. Think that doesn't require much more conversation. You then move on to the Steelers. Amarius Mims. Mm-hmm. I know that you would be kind of jumping up and down at this.
A
larger fan at least than Latham.
Yeah, than of Latham. I think Mims is kind of gotten a bad rap because everybody's he's raw because he started 8 games. His technique is good. His feet are good. It's just he's I saw somebody say he's not raw, he's green. He just hasn't played a lot. And I know that a lot of people will typically group that in with, oh, well, he's raw. He doesn't have his technique is good and he's huge. I think this is his floor, mostly because I think that a lot of the better players are going to be gone. The people that or the players that are going to make the Steelers think twice. I've heard a lot of Brian Thomas conversation. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think that's happening at 20. I know that the old adage is they'll get a guy in the second round. I'm going to listen to that old adage. I think that's going to be what ends up happening. We'll probably draft a guy in the second round. Could this pick not be the Steelers come draft day? Could this be the 49ers pick here at 20? Could be. Boy. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to, unless they take J.C. Latham or... Honestly, I don't like Fuanga. I don't like Fuanga as much as the general public does either. So okay. I'd probably be disappointed with those two. I'd be much happier with Fuanga because the value's better. He's a better player than Latham. But that was last year when the Bears took Darnell Wright. I was like, yes, we're not picking Darnell Wright. So to wrap this up, I'd be very happy with Mims. I think he's a very good player, and I honestly think that I don't know how the draft community is just well, he's only played 8 games. He's raw, developmental. We don't want anything to do with it. This guy is probably a top 15 or 18 player in this draft, and he's a tackle. Should be going higher than 20, and if he gets to 20, I think the Steelers got a really good deal.
Yeah, and I mean, this also really pairs well. They took a tackle last year, so you've shored up both sides of the offensive line. Yeah.
Georgia Boys and George Pickens.
As a Bengals fan, this makes me a little
and Darnell
Hendrickson. God, can't stand it. But you move on to the Dolphins. They're going to take Jerzon Newton,
Yeah, they call him. I don't know, like his given name is Jerzon Newton, but not really sure how. He's Johnny Newton.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was gonna say that felt so. Yeah, Johnny Newton
Lamar
is
meme.
so much better.
Johnny.
Yeah,
Um,
Johnny.
this is another really good. Dude, I'm seeing
Yeah.
stuff that Johnny Newton's going to get out of the first round. I don't understand that at all. This was a guy that
No.
pre-draft was supposed to be like a top 10, top 12 pick. I think wasn't as effective this year as he had been, and I think he also suffered a little bit of an injury mid-season. I may be wrong on that. And I don't think it's like crazy to say that he could go before Byron Murphy. He's a really, really good interior defensive line prospect. He's really well rounded. I think he does both. He stops the run and he rushes, at a at a pretty good level. He's not like unbalanced to the point where he does one a lot better than the other. And the Dolphins just let Christian Wilkins go out the door. And another thing here, another note on this pick, do not be surprised if they trade out of this pick. Yeah. I know that at 21, it's a little bit tough because this is like right at the tier gap in terms of prospects. But like, let's say a team wants to come up for Brian Thomas, or a team wants to come up for A.D. Mitchell or Cooper DeJean or Jerzon Newton. The Dolphins need cheap players, and they don't have a whole lot of those. They've only got, I believe, 4 or 5 picks in this draft, which means they're only getting 4 or 5 more cheap players. They need cheap contracts, cheap players, because this thing's about to get ugly. They've got the Tua decision lurking. What if they took Bo Nix here? I'm just saying. Or Penix, who's like, the lefty, he gets compared to Tua because he's left-handed for some reason.
I think as like a draft community, that draft night, if they're sitting there at 21 and they're taking either Bo Nix or Michael Penix, I would be scrolling Twitter because I know that it would be hilarious.
Oh yeah, because of the Tua thing. I mean, obviously, so everybody hates Tua.
Yeah, everyone hates him. But yeah, this I would say moving back makes a little bit more sense than this, or makes a little bit more sense for
Newton's a good player though. Like I think,
the value is good. I just wonder if they could almost get more value for trading back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
absolutely.
But I think they walk away happy with this.
Mm-hmm.
And you move on to another team that's, I don't know if they're happy with this, but Bo Nix
they got to be
to the Broncos.
They don't have a choice but to be happy with this, buddy. You have made your bed. You are taking an $80 million dead cap hit to ensure that Russell Wilson is not on your team. You better, in a jersey rebrand year, you better have a different fucking quarterback than Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson.
Better be happy.
You better.
With it.
And you better like it. So it's Bo Nix here. If it was me, it'd be Penix, but
I was about to say I was kind of wondering the difference between Penix and Nix here, because I would leave Penix here. 100%.
I honestly, like, the thing that has kind of been floating around, and it's almost scaring me off of Penix a little bit. Ben Solak with The Ringer did his charting where he goes through and he watches every play, and he'll like do some charting on accuracy and stuff like that. And when you say a quarterback is accurate, a lot of times people think of that as catchable balls and uncatchable balls. And what percentage of your throws are uncatchable? When it's really like there's a spectrum of like uncatchable to really tough catch to toughish catch to, right on the chest. And then there's also like a nuance part of it where it's like, are you getting it outside to your longer receivers? Are you putting it in a place, here? Are you catching guys in stride all the time? And Penix didn't really score that well on those. I didn't like see that personally. So maybe he's been doing this a little bit longer than I have. But maybe he's not as accurate as we all think he is. And he's also throwing to 3 guys that are going to get drafted in this draft, and 2 tight ends that I'm pretty sure are either going to get drafted this year or next.
I was going to say, one of them at least went.
Yeah, and Odunze's already gone. I mean, Peter Schrager put out his mock, and he's one of the 2 or 3 most tapped in guys in the league, and he had Jalen Polk going at 32. So, that is a real possibility that he could be going. I know Connor Rogers, who's with the Stock Exchange, really likes Jalen Polk.
I do remember seeing, I can't remember what podcast it's on, but this guy, he was with, I think, the Ravens for a long time, was talking about it. And he was like, yeah, when we were all in the draft room, we were kind of like, well, are we undervaluing this guy because he's throwing to, farmers and to bankers, or are we overvaluing this guy because he's thrown to 3 NFL wideouts? So I
Mhm.
think that's going to kind of be a thing you got to take into account when you look at
Another
this.
conversation we very well could have had with Jaden Daniels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We should have gone back and did that, but
Okay.
because he's going to have two people in the top 32 at least.
Yeah.
So very interesting stuff. Again, you will have a different quarterback than what's on your roster currently. I have no doubt in my mind, even if
They
it's
don't have. They
Spencer.
don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. They like
Yeah,
legitimately more than any other team outside of the Bears. Do not. I guess the Commanders kind of pigeonholed themselves into this by
yeah, I
trading
was going
away
to say.
Hal. They do not have a choice. Have to walk
Yeah,
out of this draft with a quarterback.
yeah, 100%. And they're taking who they feel is best available or who you think would be the better scheme fit. And then you move on to the Chargers from
Back up
their
again.
initial trade. Cooper DeJean goes to them, a defensive player. I think this is well needed for them. He's got the typical white man trait of a Swiss Army knife almost in that secondary.
Typical white man corner traits. We've
Yes,
seen quite a few of those in the last 20 years. Yeah, he's gonna be able to play a lot of spots, which really makes this defense interesting because so can Derwin James when he's on the field.
yes.
Again, I'm gonna say this. I've said this for the last few picks. I hear the Brian Thomas stuff. I get it. I don't know if I like him this early.
And this is something
Personally,
you said earlier. They're going to be in that prime range for a
mm-hmm.
second round
for a guy
player.
at 37,
Yeah.
and Cooper DeJean, kind of like how I talked about Amarius Mims a little bit, and if I didn't, I meant to. Like after Cooper DeJean and after Amarius Mims at tackle, there's a drop off,
and Johnny Newton too is who
yeah,
you had
and I mean
mentioned
Johnny
on
Newton,
this.
like it's those two guys, Murphy and Newton, and then after that, you're not getting seeing a guy, especially with Tavondre Sweat getting a DWI a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
You might not see another interior defensive lineman go until the 60s or 70s. But the last team to get in on this corner run is going to be with Cooper DeJean. I think Kool-Aid, I don't know how much I trust him. He had I believe it was a Liz Frank injury that was caught at his pro day, which is not good to see. He also didn't test very well. And he got, outshined. Maybe this is because everyone was scared to throw to him because he had a lot of the preseason hype, but he got outshined by his teammate Terrion Arnold at the same position. So DeJean here is going to be able to play a lot of spots. Again, Chargers are probably like, this isn't a 2-round mock, but if it was, the Chargers would be undoubtedly taking a wide receiver at 37.
Yeah.
And I mean, Talize Fuaga and Cooper DeJean, pretty solid draft.
Yeah, and you can throw. I don't think we had him in here. If you want to throw Xavier Legette in there, I think they'd be happy walking out of the draft with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you move on. We then have another team. AD Mitchell going to the Cowboys. This team is also a very. I really want to say in an odd spot. You've got Dak Prescott's contract that's going to be a massive conversation throughout the season. But you also, in a wide receiver room that didn't have a number 2, I think this makes a ton of sense. I think A.D. Mitchell's being regarded as probably the 4th best wide receiver.
Yeah, it's between him and Thomas for a lot of people. I think a lot of the conversation, a lot of the discourse with Mitchell right now is mental stuff, for lack of a better word. I mean, he's takes plays off when he knows that he's not getting the ball when he's the 3rd, 4th read. He's not running his routes all the way through. He didn't block very well. And there was a report that this goes in the draft day, or not even really draft day, like the falling down the board Hall of Fame with like Laramie Tunsil, gas mask, and Kayvon Thibodeau character issues, because I think he has type 1 diabetes or something like that.
Yes.
When his blood sugar's low, he gets moody and irritable, and that's like teams are scared off of, like, okay. I'm waiting.
I would really. I want to encourage anyone, if they are listening to this and they know somebody with type 1 diabetes or anything like that, I want you to comment if this is even true.
I don't really know.
I've never heard of it personally.
We're 3 to 4 years away from dinging a prospect because he gets a little cranky when he's tired.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, he doesn't have the best sleeping habits, and when he doesn't sleep very well, he is really tough to get along with. And that guy's going to fall to the second round because
Man,
that's just the reality of this draft.
man, this guy sucks when he hasn't had his morning coffee. God, can't
You are
stand to
not
be
you
around
when
him.
you're. He is not him when he's hungry. And man, that is not a guy that we want in our building.
No.
In terms of him as an actual football player on the field, which not to discredit that because it's not like this is like an off the field issue. This is an on the field issue. He's taking plays off, and like that's not really something I like. I still do have Brian Thomas above AD Mitchell, like in my personal wide receiver rankings. However, I think Dallas and their ever loving ego thinks they can fix him.
Jerry.
And I know that University of Texas is not directly next to Dallas, but he's also from Houston, which again, it always like is weird to me and us, like when somebody's like, oh, it's in Texas, and it's like, yeah, but that's like 7 hours away from each other. Like living in Maryland, everything is within 2 to 3 hours.
Oh no, I understand it. As somebody who's worked in is working in transportation, I understand.
Excuse me,
Texas
sorry.
It's a pretty far. Like it's a longer distance than anywhere in Maryland for us to go.
Yeah, like that's like when I went to California a few summers ago. I was in Santa Ana, which is about 45 minutes away from LA, and I was like, oh, what if we went and saw what if we went to a Padres game in San Diego? And she was like, well, that's 9 hours away, so I don't really know if that's going to be a possibility. Anyway, back to the Cowboys picking AD Mitchell. Do need a wide receiver too. Did they re-sign Brandon Cooks?
I have not heard any word on Brandon Cooks to begin with.
All right.
I've not heard.
Let's assume that
Gallup.
Let's assume Gallup is gone. I'm fairly certain Gallup is gone. But let's even assume that Cooks is still employed. He's got maybe 1 to 2 years left. And you could create a room here with AD Mitchell and CeeDee Lamb where you have 2 number 1 wide receivers for whoever's playing quarterback in the future. I can't believe I'm saying that. But and the thing is, it sucks for them because the tackle run happened and they missed it and they need a guy, but the Cowboys have always drafted the best when they take the best player. And I do think that there's a very solid possibility that AD Mitchell is the best player on their board, with the board falling like this.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be shocked if they tried to go get in on that tackle run, but I don't know if they're really even in a position to do that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I don't know. Definitely kind of an interesting situation for them to go to. And you want to talk about interesting situations? We move on to pick 25.
I told you.
Green Bay moves out of here.
They weren't done.
And the Patriots come up to pick their guy, Michael Penix. We talked about the conversation between Nix and Penix. I feel like the Patriots had to be kind of scrambling the moment Bo Nix's name was called because they needed a quarterback. Again, Jacoby Brissett's the only other one on the roster that's worth mentioning. Now you pair up the 2 Washington Huskies to go out there in New England. Yeah.
And look, the Patriots are picking at 34. The teams picking between 34 and 25 are the Packers, the Bucks, the Cardinals, the Bills. Bills, Lions, Ravens, 49ers, Chiefs, and Panthers. None of those teams are taking a quarterback. However, one of those teams, I don't know who, somebody could be like, okay, we want a quarterback. And if they do, the Patriots are screwed.
Yeah.
This is also a case of I'm not doing a whole second round mock draft just to show everybody that the Patriots did, in fact, address quarterback. Also, hate picking for the Packers. Never a fun proposition, especially when Cooper DeJean is off the board. Didn't want to do it. Didn't do it. Don't care. Okay. I will say one comment on the quarterback situation. Let's say the Patriots were sitting, no, they're out of this at this point, but the Broncos at 12, they moved down. From when the Broncos moved down to when they pick again at 22. The only team that could make this interesting and really create a mad dash is the Rams. If the Rams decide we want to take Matthew Stafford's succession plan, whether that be Nix or Penix, there is going to be something crazy happen at around 20 or 21 with New England or Denver might just move up 2 spots just to secure the fact that, okay, we did it, it's done. Because if one of them gets jumped, it starts to get ugly. And I think, quite honestly, with the Broncos trade down, I think that they would, I don't really know even how they would have this, but they would need to have it on good authority that the Rams aren't taking a quarterback at 19. Like, if there is an inkling of a rumor that comes out, it's like the Rams might like taking a quarterback at 19, that, they really like Bo Nix, that trade will not happen, because they are going to be afraid to be left behind. And quite frankly, if that rumor starts popping up, I don't think the Patriots would go back up to 8 to go get Odunze. I think they'd stick at 13 and maybe take a quarterback there.
Yeah. I think it'll be a fun scenario, though. I would definitely love to be on draft night with that happening, just as a fan. Obviously, not as a Broncos or a Patriots fan, but as a fan of the NFL, I think that would be awesome to kind of watch. Be like, oh my god, who's going to jump who? What's a package?
And it's like, oh my, like it's a mad dash. We're going to see this like in the next 10 minutes. Somebody's going to have to do something. And I mean, let me tell you, if the Rams take a quarterback at 19, the Steelers are sitting there at 20, just like, come on. And let me tell you, if the Steelers are picking at 20, and in this situation the Broncos are picking at 22, I would not be surprised if New England gave 34 and a future first to go up to 20 and get Michael Penix.
I agree.
Which
because
is
they know
insane, but
because if it's not
one of those Raiders first,
Mm-hmm. We're not going to spend too much time on hypotheticals. We're going to move on here. Michael Penix is a Patriot.
With Odunze. That's another important component of this.
Yes. You then move on to 26. The Buccaneers, they take Jared Verse.
This is another one I never know what to do with the Bucs. 25 and 26 are always like, I got to... but Verse falling to them here is good. I mean, this is a very good pick for them. This is a best player available pick. They've been trying to address their defensive line. Their last 3 first-round picks, or their last 3 first picks, have been Kalijah Kancey, defensive lineman, Logan Hall, defensive lineman, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, edge rusher. They are trying desperately to address this group. They also lost Shaq Barrett this offseason to Miami. They need edge rushers. Jared Verse falls right into their lap, a guy that I would not be surprised if he goes in the top 15. Falling to them at 26, they don't have to move. This is great business for Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Then there's not much to talk about with Tampa Bay.
Low moving costs. Florida State.
Mm-hmm. They're an interesting team going forward. I don't think we're going to be talking about them as like a team that's either rebuilding or championship contender anytime soon, but definitely kind of interesting to watch them progress through the draft. I don't even know if they're going to trade down.
Like I said, they're weird. They're weird.
Yeah. Strange team. You move to another team that this pick is going to make a ton of sense for them. The Cardinals are going to take Nate Wiggins, cornerback. Brilliant move for them. They need help everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere there's not quarterback.
Back-to-back best player available picks. I think Nate Wiggins at 27 would be an absolute steal. I mean, I know there is like more than one person out there that has Nate Wiggins as their number 2 corner behind Quinyon Mitchell, and he showed that on tape a lot. But I think teams got scared when he went to the combine, and at first it's like, oh my god, he just ran a 4.27 or whatever the number was. But then he gets hurt at the end of said 4.27, and he also weighs in at 170 pounds, which is really scary for a guy that's 6'2".
Yeah.
However, going to Arizona, where they're going to play a lot of, off coverage, they're going to play a lot of zone. This is very similar to the ideology that the Commanders had with Emmanuel Forbes last year. Not the greatest comparison if we wanted to be successful, but in terms of the process of like scheme fits and stuff where you get a slighter guy to come in and play in that kind of coverage, Arizona's going to run a lot of that. And Wiggins, honestly, he just needs like 8 more pounds. Even if that means he loses like a 1/10 of a second off of his 40, give him like 8-10 more pounds, and Wiggins is going to be very good. And, Marvin Harrison and Nate Wiggins, what a draft for Arizona.
Absolutely. Really kind of changing directions for Arizona, because I know we talked about them for a long time as being pretty bad.
Yeah.
And
they got a lot more picks here too.
Exactly. And now we come up to the Bills selection. This has been a major talking point for much of the offseason. But no longer. Brian Thomas is going to become a Buffalo Bill. obvious Stephon Diggs replacement. There's been conversations about that. Don't want to get too much into that, but the Brian Thomas pick here feels pretty slam dunkish for them.
Oh yeah, this is slam dunkish.
Okay.
Bills fans will be maybe celebrating in the streets is a little heavy,
Tables!
but they will be jumping on tables in Buffalo if Brian Thomas slips all the way to 28. They don't have to trade up for. I mean, this is like, I mean, we're talking about, at least like some of the media is like, well, what if they put together a Julio Jones package to go up into the top 10, and they could get a guy that, you know, even if it's a tier gap down from that level of player, they get him all the way down at 28. This would be like a miracle. This is the best player on the board probably, or at least on their board.
Yeah.
This would be fantastic for them. Let me kick you a quick scenario though, because me and you've talked about fantasy a lot, and I didn't even intend to do this, but this has created a very, very interesting scenario in terms of fantasy. Marvin Harrison is the number 1 rookie wide receiver, but the next two guys, presumably, Malik Neighbors is a Giant with Daniel Jones, Rome Odunze is a Patriot with Michael Penix, and Brian Thomas is a Buffalo Bill with Josh Allen. Who is the first wide receiver taken after Marvin Harrison? I'll even throw A.D. Mitchell as a Cowboy in there as well.
I wouldn't consider A.D. Mitchell as the next wide receiver. I'm either taking, I would at least take Brian Thomas for him. But to move back to that, it really would depend on situation.
Well, that is the situation. I just gave you the situation.
I'm talking about for the fantasy team. If you're talking about just purely fantasy teams, I mean.
Okay, well, what are you? Go ahead, do your thing.
Because you'd have to wait on Neighbors, and I feel like even Odunze, he'd still have that kind of connection with Michael Penix. If you're looking for a more immediate fit, I'd go Odunze as the next wide receiver.
Just ignoring Thomas as the far and away wide receiver 1 with Buffalo.
Yeah, I
don't hate it.
I mean, I think it's just a clear step down.
This would be
good players will get the ball, and I feel like Odunze is a better. He is definitely a better player than Brian Thomas.
Ask Garrett Wilson if good players get the ball. Ask Garrett Wilson.
Well,
tier.
Okay.
Let me tell, for just quick interjection, I am picking 3rd in a Superflex league. Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison are probably going 1 and 2. If this happened, I would be unhappy.
Upset.
Very unhappy, because this would make my life a lot harder. Anyway.
Yeah, to go back to the actual draft, Chop Robinson is now in Detroit. We talked about it earlier. Fantastic New Jerseys. We'll see them on draft night. And he will be wearing a Chop Robinson. I feel like this makes a good bit of sense for them. You pair him up alongside Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, they're another team that's tough to draft for. I would probably be looking at corner here, but I just don't know. I don't think Rakestraw is quite a first round player. He's probably right out of it, and obviously Detroit doesn't pick again until the 60s. Same thing with Kool-Aid. I don't really know if he fits what they want to do in Detroit.
Now, to interject, if Nate Wiggins is still here, do you think
if Nate Wiggins is here, but the thing is, he plays like a Dan Campbell guy, but
he is not.
He is not a Dan Campbell guy. Like he's going to need to put on a lot more weight to because I mean they're playing the run very heavily there. They're hitting. He can't do that. And like maybe I'm overthinking the Dan Campbell-ism part of this, but I think it's very real for a guy like Dan Campbell to look at a 170-pound corner and be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm okay.
I mean, still with the caliber of player.
And he's like I said, fantastic player. On the flip side, though, Chop Robinson is a really, really good athlete. He's a big speed rusher. He's gonna do a lot of speed to power. And I thought about Darius Robinson here as well. He just is kind of a weird fit for them because he's a 285-pound edge rusher, and we really don't know if he's going to play edge or inside. So I figured, and Chop, there's been some like conversation, some discourse of whether or not he's going to go in the first round. He's an edge rusher with these kinds of traits. He's going in the first. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, just depends on who. And to move on, or to kind of like comment on the Darius Robinson thing, if there's even an inkling that he's going to probably be moving inside, wouldn't make much sense for Detroit to come get him, especially after going to get DJ Reader in the offseason.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, makes sense. And now you move to Baltimore. This is another pick that makes a good deal of sense. Jordan Mogan, offensive tackle.
This is one that has been like discussed at a good length that they really, really like Jordan Morgan. He is obviously like a tier down from Mims and that group. He is in the next tier with him, Tyler Guyton, Kieran Amagaji, Kingsley Sumatia. The fact that I've heard so much that they like Morgan is why I went with him here. Guyton would have been like my second choice, but he was like billed as this like phenomenal athlete, and then went and tested and was a pretty, like, he was a good athlete, but he wasn't like a generational type athlete, and that was kind of what he was projected to be. And when people talk about what Tyler Guyton is what people think Amarius Mims is. Like, the project, the you're going to need to sit him for a year. That's what Tyler Guyton is. And that's why Tyler Guyton is probably going to end up in the middle of the second round, whereas like a month or two ago, I was mocking him in the 20s, and that wasn't even like insane. But the Ravens, sneakily, like, I'm still seeing that they need to take a wide receiver. While that's probably true, they lost 3 starters on the offensive line this offseason, and the fourth one, Ronnie Stanley, was basically playing every other series last year. They need offensive line bad. Like, Jordan Morgan, and the reason why I didn't take Tyler Guyton is because you don't have time to wait for Tyler Guyton if you're the Ravens. Like, and to the outside eye, they might be like, oh yeah, the Ravens usually, they'll get guys ahead of time, and they've got a pretty good offensive line and everything. They have a couple really rough spots. I mean, Jordan Morgan's probably going to come in and play right tackle right away. Right now it's Mercari. Maybe they play Morgan at guard, but they could put Mercari at guard because I'm pretty sure that's actually his natural position, or center actually, but Linderbaum's there. But this is a need pick that, Jordan Morgan in any other situation probably isn't a first rounder, but they have to walk out of this first round with an offensive lineman, in my opinion.
I think the only reason that people are not going to be talking as much about an offensive tackle for them is just because Lamar Jackson is there. I feel like that's the only excuse that people are giving them, is that he's going to be able to kind of move around and not need that offensive line as much. But as we saw last year, he was much more in the pocket. So I feel like that's going to kind of help him out with that new style he's sort of crafted out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
We're leading into the last 2 picks here. Darius Robinson, we hinted at it earlier. He's going to be coming off the board at 31 to San Francisco. This is going to join.
Fits right into Arik Armstead's role, who they had to cut because they are paying everybody $1 bajillion. Can't afford to pay Arik Armstead that.
Except for Brandon Ayuk.
Except for Brandon Ayuk, who is actually a Steeler in real life. That's happening. Beat the Dubs. I've got sources. AV told me.
Yep.
AV told me.
AB, CTESPN.
Yeah, but like that edge / interior guy that Arik Armstead was for them for so many years, that's exactly what Darius Robinson's going to do. This is actually like a really, like, I didn't even really think about it until I was doing it. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect for them. Because the 49ers also a team that I've had trouble drafting for, because, they're not really in the wide receiver market, and this is like the wide receiver range. Kool-Aid doesn't really fit for them as well as I would have liked him to. They like Morgan. I don't know if I love Tyler Guyton here. I've done that in the past, but Robinson is a really, really nice fit for them in that defense. He also, there were only 13 guys are going to the draft this year, which I think is kind of crazy. Like, there's only 13 guys that are going to be in Detroit for the draft, and it was like 12 guys that I'm pretty sure, at least in our mock, went top 20. And Darius Robinson, which to me means that somebody told him, hey, if you're there at 31, we're going to take you. Or if you're there at our pick, we're going to take you. Because, he is from Detroit or the Michigan area, but I still don't think he'd sign himself up for that if he doesn't have any first-round guarantees. But we saw Will Levis, Brian Branch, a couple other guys do that last year, so who knows?
Yeah. We're now moving on. Final pick. It is the Super Bowl champion. I hate to say that. Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to stick right at 32. They don't have to move at all, and they're going to get Ladd McConkey, who I feel like is a pretty good value for them. Even
it's good value. Go ahead.
I was going to say it fills a massive role now that Rashee Rice is going to be playing prison football.
Yeah,
moving forward.
We'll see. I do think it's going to be a pretty heavy suspension. We could be looking at like 6 to 8 games for Rashee Rice, if not maybe even a little bit more. I don't know how much I love this fit if I'm being brutally honest with you, I just feel like this is like okay, Ladd McConkey's really good. He's never going to be an all-pro, but he's going to be really damn good for us in an offense that needs wide receivers. He's going to get open on third down, and he's just going to be he's going to be an outlet for Patrick Mahomes. That is ultimately what's most important.
I was gonna say it's gonna be so annoying in those really deep AFC Championship games. You know, you're in the fourth quarter. It's a really pivotal 3rd and 6, and
this
here
is
he
going to
is
be third
running.
and Renfro on acid.
Yeah, he's gonna be running this little 7-yard out route. He's gonna barely get it, feed in, gonna be perfect, and it's just gonna piss every fan base off in the league, whether it's the Texans, the Bengals, the Steelers. By God knows how, which magic
In the AFC Championship, it was said.
Yeah,
it was said on this podcast. All right, I'm going to pitch you something real quick. We just did it. I'm going to make you do it again. Now, I know that you were talking about situation, but I'm telling you to rank these 5 wide receivers for Dynasty.
All went in the first round.
You rank Malik Nabers of the Giants, Rome Odunze to the Patriots, A.D. Mitchell to the Cowboys, Brian Thomas to the Bills, and Ladd McConkey to the Chiefs. If you had to go 1 through 5 in like a Dynasty startup.
But would it be 1 through 6 technically? Well, I guess it would be.
Harrison's 1. So ranking, I guess, 2 through 6.
Okay.
How would you rank those
Got
guys?
it. I'm probably taking Odunze, and then I'm looking at Brian Thomas, but Nabers is on his heels. And then I'm probably looking at Ladd, and then A.D. Mitchell, because A.D. Mitchell's still going to play second
Wide
fiddle
receiver too.
to C.D. Lamb. Yeah, I think A.D. Mitchell's clearly the kind of black sheep in this.
However, don't sleep on the fact that C.D. Lamb did not go to voluntary workouts, and he does need a contract, as does Dak Prescott, as does Micah Parsons. And if we remember, the last time the Cowboys took a wide receiver in the first round, they had a pretty damn good wide receiver on their team at the time named Amari Cooper. And they drafted C.D. Lamb. I'm just saying. That's just
now,
I think that's going to be something that this is June Dynasty football talk is exactly what that is. But it's reaching. I
don't know. Yeah, I was going to say we're really grasping at straws here with that.
I think I would rank it Nabers at 1, Thomas at 2,
over Odunze, even with Penix.
Daniel Jones is an NFL quarterback, man. I know he's not great.
But you just said you're taking Nabers at 2. You're taking Nabers as second best dynasty over.
You know how I feel about Nabers.
I know, but God
bless. And it's not like completely out of the realm of possibility that the Giants get the best quarterback in the draft next year. Like that very well could happen. Also, Malik Nabers, pretty good manufactured touch guy. So if they're just like, hey, we're just going to give you the ball 11 times a game, you do what you do.
Okay.
That very well could happen. So I probably have Brian Thomas 2, and then Odunze at 3, and then Ladd at 4, and A.D. Mitchell at 5.
Yeah.
But Ladd is like the high floor, low ceiling play because he's never.
Yes.
But like I say, never. But Travis Kelce probably on the heels of retirement. Rashee Rice, prison. What if Ladd McConkey is the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs? I mean, we saw how valuable Rashee Rice became in terms of dynasty for that little run there.
Yeah. I mean,
this guy's also got the first round stamp of approval.
There's a moment in time I made a very bad fantasy trade where I took Josh Downs over Rashee Rice, and I was like kicking myself.
Doesn't feel terrible at this moment, but
sweet. Yeah, but I think that Ladd McConkey, I would be looking at him in the early second round of 8-man leagues, 10-man leagues, early second, late.
Oh, if he goes to the Chiefs, he's going.
I don't think he is picked 8 at least in our league. I don't think he goes 8.
We'll see,
because we'll discuss that at a later date. But I don't think he's going to go there. But
we'll see.
Yeah, to kind of put a bow on this bad boy, this was a chaotic draft.
Do you want to recap? Do you want to recap 17 through 32 real quick?
We can recap that, yeah. So you have Perry Arnold going to Jacksonville, J.C. Latham going to the Bengals, Leatu Latu to the Rams, Amarius Mims to the Steelers, Johnny Newton to the Dolphins, Bo Nix, new QB1 in Denver, Cooper DeJean to the Chargers, A.D. Mitchell going to the Cowboys, Penix to the Patriots, Jared Verse to the Buccaneers, Nate Wiggins to the Cardinals, Brian Thomas is a Buffalo Bill. Chop Robinson is on the Lions. Jordan Mogan is in Baltimore. Darius Robinson is in San Francisco. And Lad McConkey is a Chief.
I don't know if I'm just mishearing it, but I feel like you've missed the R in Morgan the last 2 or 3 times you've said it. You keep saying
You're definitely missing it.
Jordan Mogan.
Jordan Mogan. I'm not missing it. I
don't know.
Not.
Maybe it's okay. It's okay.
Losing your marbles over there, mister. But yeah, we really appreciate anyone who stuck through this whole ramble on about this mock draft here. But I think this is a very, very exciting time. Obviously, draft season's full of chaos.
We are exactly 72 hours away from when the Chicago Bears will be on the clock.
Officially,
yeah,
at least.
8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock on Monday right now, so we are 72 hours away. I'm sure that there will be even less time by the time you're listening to this, which is even more exciting.
Exactly. It's like Christmas Eve almost.
It legitimately feels like Christmas Eve for me.
Yeah. But we'd like to thank you all for coming out. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know if you disagreed with some things. Let us know how you think some of the trades would have played out. If you're a fan of some of these teams, let us know. Especially, we've got any diehard Patriots fans. Let us know about their kind of moves that they've made here. Mm-hmm. Let us know. We'd appreciate any and all feedback. I guess we're signing off here. Jaden, any last comments?
The old sign off is always one of the toughest things for me. You never really know what to say, so I'm gonna let you figure that out and do your thing. But let's go Sixers.
Oh, yep. Sixers game is on. Are we in the end of the first quarter now, or
just about?
Well, we're gonna close it out. Thank you all. We hope to see you sooner than 4 months or however long it's been. Hopefully this is the dawn of a new era. I know that we'd love to get back together and comment on the end of this draft. And once we have everything kind of finalized.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will be doing some post-draft content for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, hopefully this is the dawn of a new era, not just a flash in the pan. I would like to see you all again.